Hello and welcome to NARC Live on Wednesday, the 13th of October 2021. Coming to you live from Norfolk on the east coast of England with Tammy M0TC.
Hello.
And me, David G7ERP. Great to see you. On tonight's show, we share your pictures and experiences of HF antenna for the first in our new series, In the Shack. Your news plus details of a free amateur television event this Saturday. And we find out, what on earth is this? Any ideas? We've got a few. Not immediately obvious, I think. So if you do know what that is, please... No, not. I'm just looking at someone at home now who's got one of these because he put it in. But if you think you know what this is, it's still a little bit of time to enter and put it onto BATC or on Facebook. And we'll read it out when we get the other answers as well. Tammy, I think we actually should go and see everybody at home.
Yeah, okay.
If that's all right. Hello, everybody.
We've got a couple of people waiting to get in as well. So
Only got 6 so far. Oh, we've got 3 more. Okay, yeah. Let's have a look.
We just add them in.
Let's have a look. Okay. So let's wait until they all come on. We've got Jim and we've got... let's go from the top. We've got Paul and Sunny and Tony and Paul again and Malcolm and Victor and Jim and Steve. Brilliant to see you all. Thank you for joining. And Paul, we've got a black square for you, Paul, but I know you're there, so that's really good to see you. Anyway, let's get through a little bit of news, and then we'll, of course, get round to that main event in a little while. But if you do know what that mystery object is, we'd love to hear from you. I must just say, I think we should reveal, because they're our friends. I mean, we're in a bit of chaos, aren't we?
We are. My phone just fell on the floor in case you wondered what the dunk was.
A lot of issues with other events, which were very well planned and everything else. We've had issues like our main printer in this whole building went wrong. So we just suddenly realised that when it came to printing the script, there wasn't a printer on, so I had to rush down to the other end of the building and switch that on, and then it had a printer jam, and that was about 7:25. So that's why, if we feel a bit, that's why. Anyway, let's start off with telling you about Nigel 2E0 NLK. You may remember we've been talking about it for a couple of weeks. He was doing a fundraising event on Saturday, and... it went really well. I don't know if you can see that slide again, Tammy. This is Combat to Coffee. It's a charity game. He's very much into a thing called Airsoft, which I must admit I hadn't heard of it called that before, but it's something quite impressive to do as a hobby. And they were raising money. And Nigel wrote a note and just said, just to let you know that the weekend charity event went really well, and we've raised just over £1,000 for Combat to Coffee. Just waiting for someone to hopefully give him a video, and then he's going to send it to us. So hopefully we'll be able to see what that's been all about. So that would be really, really good. Now, I don't know if you're like me and you're interested in television. You know that's my favourite part of the hobby, amateur television. It's moved on quite a lot from those early days of experimenting with analogue TV and things, because now you can have digital television as well as all the analogue things as well. Anyway, the British Amateur Television Club, where of course we stream this programme to every week, is having the second part of their annual convention. And you can watch details, and I think, well, I know Tammy's really busy getting other guests and things up there, but if we show you this is this Saturday from 9:30, and it's free for anybody to watch this. Even if you're not a member. If you're a member, you can join by Zoom, but if you want to just have a look in, as you'll notice, it's very similar to the address that we use for this programme now. So if you're watching us on NARC Live, it's almost the same, except at the end, instead of NARC, you've got CAT21, CAT21, and that's what it's called. Right, so this is the second part of their CAT convention, and they'll be talking about a lot of the different new technologies used in amateur television and kits and other things that the British Amateur Television Club do. There's also various sort of informal workshops and things like that as well. So if you are interested, then have a look at that on Saturday morning. Tammy and I are actually hosting it as well for them. So you'll occasionally see me on screen, I think, but mainly it's obviously all about the speakers and everything else. So we're looking forward to that this Saturday.
You won't see me?
Won't see you, no. You don't like the exposure, do you? Okay. This is quite enough on a Wednesday night, I understand. Okay, now I haven't had much news from you this week. I have to say, very little. So please keep us in touch. Doesn't matter what it's about, because Paul G3VPT, he sent us a picture and wrote this. You often ask for information on what we've been doing. Well, this tenor mast was sent from eBay out of the blue, and it was as it was local, he followed it up. It's a 3-section 15-metre mast and was up for a starting bid of £10 or make an offer. So Paul said he offered £200, and he was expecting maybe to have to pay up to £750 or so, which was a bit much. But it was later taken off and then reappeared again, starting at £380. So his offer was a little bit more. His offer was accepted, and then Bob and Paul and his son-in-law and his mate with a car transporter, because that's quite a beast, isn't it, collected it on Sunday. It had to be dismantled in order just to move it, because it also came with a new ground socket as well, so you didn't have to dig the old one out of the concrete. Paul says that I had removed an old greenhouse to make way for it, and will need to have bits taken off the sycamore tree before we can make a start. So that project will be some way down the line. Anyway, it's a lovely looking tenor mast. You put it at a fraction of the price. I mean, I bought one many years ago, and I think it was £1,000 then. So with the cost of metal and everything else since, I should think for a brand new one, you were well into your £1,400–1,500. So you did well, Paul. Thanks for letting us know as well. Thanks for sharing that. And the only other thing that was sent to us, thanks to John G0MXN, sent us a picture of it's one of his favourite photos, he says. This was taken in 2015, and it's one of the last of the old fleet of British buses in Malta before they introduced modern Chinese buses. I was taking a trip in one from north of Malta to Valletta. Between stops, the driver pulled up and got out of the bus carrying bags of groceries and started walking up a steep slope to a house. A local Maltese man saw me looking at the driver and said, "It's okay, he's dropping off his disabled uncle's shopping." He does that every week. As John says, that brings a new meaning to care in the community, even over there. Well, that's a classy way to have your shopping delivered, isn't it?
It is.
Anyway, that's all of it. Really, not much news at all from you this week, so we really do just occasionally drop us a line, keep us in touch. It helps keep you in touch with us and everybody else watching as well. And so now it's that time again. I can't get used to white paper. We always use slightly off white paper, light blue paper, yeah, just so it doesn't flare and stuff in the cameras. Paul at home will know all that's all about. But our printer didn't have the blue paper in it. Anyway, Tammy, your little people. Let's have a look.
Well, little people this week thought we should go with a space theme, as Captain Kirk went to space today.
Today?
Yeah.
Did he really?
Yeah.
William Shatner went to space. Isn't he 80?
90.
Oh my goodness. It's time for me yet.
Yep.
Look at this. Anyway, this is brilliant.
Nacho space.
Are they
it's
nachos?
Like those little knick-knack things you used to get.
I thought they were twiglets.
They're not twiglets, are they?
That
like
is
those knick-knack things.
Very cool, isn't it? Because if you took out the hand there and everything, I think that sort of spoils it, in my opinion. Because the rest of it could be real, the vapor trail and everything else, couldn't it?
Yep.
Anyway, right, thank you. Yeah, absolutely topical. Miniature-calendar.com if you're interested in that, and lots of other pictures like it as well. So Captain Kirk went up today.
Yep.
Oh, I did see a spoof thing on one of the social media a couple of days ago. There's a picture of Captain Kirk in this space rocket, and there's an alien outside the window, and asking, Captain Kirk, what do we do now, sort of thing. So I don't think he'll have that sort of problem, one would hope. But anyway, marvellous stuff. So let us know what you've been doing. You can drop us a line to this usual address every week. It's radio@dcpmicro.com. We don't mind the odd pictures as well, about nothing to do with radio, though. It's nice to keep in touch with the projects and other things that you've been doing as well. Anyway, let's back to this competition that we do every week. And we call it, What on Earth is This? So what do you think this is? I thought I knew immediately.
We've had a couple of guesses.
Yes.
Online.
Oh, okay. We'll reveal him in a minute. But I must just tell you that Tony M0TDK, who came up with this one, and he wouldn't tell me what it was. And I said, well, look, that's part of the object. I need to know what it is to be able to tell. And he said, no, you guess. So I had a guess, and it was a bit wrong. So there we are. I think whatever happens, I think we should get Tony a new tape measure for Christmas. That's something I do think. Anyway, let's have a look. So what have you said? Online, we've had a guess. Rodney G0CBO says, what on earth is this? Is maybe a crimping tool to secure ferrules and nipples to control wires for bikes or motorbikes. Okay. I can't see. What was the other one?
Yeah, I'm sorry. The people on Facebook is saying that it keeps freezing or there's...
Oh, really?
So, yeah, I think it did...
Have we got a technical problem
Well,
here?
we haven't, but it looks like the stream did drop out on Facebook a few moments ago. On Facebook's side of things.
Well, if you are watching this on Facebook, I tell you what we'll do on Facebook. We'll drop a link on Facebook now where you can click on that and you should be able to watch this on whatever device you're watching on BATC. So there we are. We've just popped it in the chat on BATC. Did we have any other guesses, Tammy?
Yeah, sorry, we have. So, when I just can find them, hang on a sec. Oh, Andy.
Oh yeah, Andy. 0NKR.
NKR.
I'm sorry, yeah, I know we should. I know you think, well, you know my call sign, but when you have about 100 call signs to remember, it's hard. Anyway, Andy thinks that it's a hole punch for studs. And Mike Mobs says, are they ball joint pliers? Don't know what ball joints.
Don't know.
Okay. Well, that's what you think. Thank you for those entries. Let's have a look what we've got here. Mark Ribbons said, I reckon that's a crimper for press studs. John G0MXN is hedging his bets because he had 3 guesses in total. And he did actually send us this picture. So he says, I think it's a hole punch for when using, for use when filing papers. And that was his idea there. It sort of goes around with the black...
That just looks like a mean fish, doesn't it, that?
You just spoilt it now. Oh yes, I can't unsee that now, Tammy. Thank you. Yeah, I see what you mean. That could be yes, very good. He says the dark circle is a reinforced patch for strengthening the corner of filed paper to stop it tearing in use if the paper gets tugged accidentally. Then he wrote me another email and says, on second thought, so we'll take that one off, Tammy, if we could. It may not be a hole punch, but rather a tool for crimping pages together, because I can't see the part that punches a hole. And then he sent me a third email and says, could the mystery object be an eyelet insertion tool? I think that's kind of what Mark said. But another guess was Alan G800 says, I think it's a hole punch. And John G0JDL, our last entry, said the mystery item is a pair of Cleco pliers. These are used in sheet metal working. Special pins known as Clecos are inserted into a rivet hole using the pliers to secure 2 sheets of sheet metal before the pieces are riveted together. Now that's what he thinks, and we happen to have the person who entered this in online, but before that we're going to show a video that Tony sent us to tell us and show us exactly what this thing is. So here we go.
I've got to just show that other picture quickly first.
All right, okay.
There we go.
Lovely.
There
There's
we
a
go.
video. That explains it better than any words. But let's go to the man himself, if I can put Tammy on the spot there.
Yep.
We'll go to Tony now. If you could unmute Tony, and we'll come to you. And just, because one question in my mind, and maybe other people watching as well, is what exactly are those things? So we can see what the tool did. And I've been in engineering for a fair while, but I can't work out what those things are. So Cleco pliers. Tony, tell us what Clecos are.
Well, the real name for them are skin pins. What they are, and I've got one here, I don't know whether you can see it.
If you just bring it in front of you, because Zoom, you're using a virtual background, that's right, there, yeah, then we can see it. So just make sure it's in front of you at all times, and then we can see it.
Yeah, I'm moving it in the wrong direction. And the delay doesn't make it easy.
That's okay. No, just put it in front of you, in the middle of you, just underneath your chin, and we'll be able to see it. I promise you. Yeah, we do this all the time.
Right.
You don't half look silly.
These things come in different sizes, and they are precision devices. This one, because it's copper colour, is in fact for 1/8" holes. And what you do is you pick up your Cleco pliers.
Be careful now. I don't want to be responsible for any injury to you.
And you carefully clip your moustache into the Cleco. And I don't know whether you can see it, but sticking out of this thing, there is like a probe, and when you compress it, it gets longer. And between I don't know how to describe it. There's two prongs. When you expand it like this, they go together. And when you release it, a piece of metal shoots up between them and pushes them apart. So that enables you to hold sheets of metal together. And when you're building an aeroplane, or people building classic cars use them as well, what you do is that you put all the holes in place, you clean the holes, you make sure they're deburred, and you Cleco everything together. Cleco being the name of the company who invented this. And you can then test assemble the whole thing.
That's brilliant.
There is a British equivalent, which is far superior, but very slow to use. It's a manual skin pin. It's like it has a thread in it, and you tighten the little knob on the back rather than do this. So Clecos are way quicker, inevitably.
Well, it's excellent, Tony, because I think you fooled everybody, including me, and except for John G0JDL, who got it absolutely right, didn't he?
Well, it's one of these things you either know or you don't.
Yes.
These things, Clecos, come in at least four different diameters, or for 4 different size holes. This is an 1/8" one, but they do 3/16, 5/8. None of your metric rubbish. They're all proper jobs.
All right. Okay, well, Tony, thank you ever so much for sending that one in, and you've given us a lot of entertainment and a lot of information as well, that we've now learned what a Cleco is. I just have never come across that. Have you?
Nope.
You never know? All right, well, thank you ever so much for doing that. And while we talk about that one, we've got a few in the bank, but we would love some more. So you must have something like that around your house that maybe only you and a few others might know what it is. We would love to see. It doesn't have to be a tool, though. I know a lot of them invariably are, because we're all sort of kind of geeks and engineers. But if you've got something else like that, as I said, it can be a kitchen implement. It can be other things, not just to do with engineering and radio. We would love to see them. Or maybe as a suggestion, even maybe a photo of something taken from an unusual angle where you can't really tell. As long as it's sort of vaguely possible to work it out. You used to have those things on telly on some quizzes years ago where they used to show something from an unusual angle and then eventually zoom out. Something like that. That was why we called this quiz What on Earth Is This? Because to give it a real broad feel. So if you've got something like that at home, or have a think, and we would love to see it. Anyway, going back to Tony, he's put his hand up there.
Just briefly, thank you for the offer of a Christmas present of a tape measure.
No, what, did I say that?
well, no, not directly. I was extracting it a bit, but don't bother, because I found that one in my field, and it just was the first one I picked up, and I do have better ones, I assure you. Okay,
well, there we are. There, now that you have spoilt it, because there we are. You'll know what it was that I was going to send you, but don't worry, Tony, because they do them in Poundland and everything, so it wasn't going to be expensive. All right. Anyway, thanks again, Tony, and everybody else who entered that as well for us. So let's have a look. It's time to find out this week's mystery object. So what on earth is this? This again, well, I think you guess is a... do you know what inspired me? Because I've looked through the various pictures of things that people sent me, and it was thinking of Nigel with his airsoft and a gun, and I thought, well, this is sort of, in James Bond films.
You're just giving away now that it's a gun.
Well, no, but it looks like a gun. No, I haven't given it away. No, that looks like a gun, but it isn't possibly a gun. Or maybe. You've just ruined it. Anyway, with James Bond out and Nigel doing his airsoft, I thought that was sort of topical. So that's what it is. What on earth is this? Or we could say, what on earth is this for? But that's the only clue you're going to get. And it might be one of those things, a bit like Tony said, where you either know or you don't. Let us know by 3 o'clock next Wednesday to that email address there, radio@dcpmicro.com. And we'll reveal all at this time next week on NARC Live. We'll put this also on Facebook and on our website, as usual, on the newsletter as well. So just to tell you quickly what's happening on the club this week. On Saturday, I mentioned that BATC convention, not really a club activity, but something if you're interested in radio, and I don't know what the weather's going to be like this weekend, but if you want to have a look at that, it's something that Tammy and I are involved with, and there's some really good stuff if you're interested in the television side of the hobby. On Sunday at 7 o'clock in the evening, it's GB2RS News. On Monday, the 18th of October, firstly, we've got some Morse classes. I know we've shown you this before, but they're all week, really. But they do start on Monday at 10 o'clock, so I thought we'd give them another shout. There we are. There's all those different Morse classes run by various club members, and all of them, I believe, on GB3MB.
Various abilities as well.
Yes, absolutely. And with absolute beginners on Friday there with Phil at the last one between 8 and 9. Also at 7:30 on Monday night, we've got the Monday Night Net. This week with guest host Michael 2E0 SZP. And at 8:30, the 80 metre CW net on 3.543 megahertz. And next Wednesday here on NARC Live, we have a guest coming to us live from the States. It's Alan Walkie, W2AEW, and he is going to be telling us about equipment for the shack, test equipment for the shack. On a different channel, I did a webinar with him before where he talked about some specific piece of equipment, but he's so knowledgeable. He actually works for Tektronix in the States, and he knows all about activity, all about different sorts of equipment, and he suggested this would be a good talk. So if you've not got much test equipment, maybe just a multimeter around, you want to know what an oscilloscope would bring you and all those sort of things for your hobby, watch next week, because Alan will do a great talk on that. That's on NARC Live at 7:30. Plus, of course, all the regulars and what on earth is this and everything else that we do. And also, and I know I hid it away because we were fairly busy with another activity on Saturday. Here we are. Here's the club card, which we're happy to send to anybody that you think will be cheered by this card, and we'll send it if you just send us an email with their address and what it's for and your name, and we'll add your name to ours and send it wherever they are in the world. We'll be very happy to do that.
Just before we move on, there is a comment from John M6JAU about the
about that device.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Should I read that, or would you like to read it?
No, you can read it.
Okay, so this is from John. When I worked for Vinton's in Bury, Vinton's make camera tripods and all that sort of thing. We used to make camera pods for aircraft, and I've seen them full of hundreds of those sheet metal pinning devices like a hedgehog, but they were the threaded type that sorry, that was mentioned, and I didn't know about the pliers operated type. So there we are. Thank you very much, John, for that bit of information as well. So now we're on to our main event tonight, and we've got lots of pictures from you and details about your HF antennas. It's in a new series which we're calling In the Shack, because we felt that as we're going to be doing this for some time longer, really as a club, we should occasionally talk to each other and share with each other experiences about various antennas and what works for you, and not just antennas but lots of other things as well. We're going to be looking at rigs, we're going to be looking at VHF stuff, we're going to be looking at different modes that you can have, and as well as the equipment and the radios themselves. So over the next few months, once a month roughly, we will do one of these things called In the Shack. It's a shame that tonight is a contest night, I know, because there's other people who would have liked to have joined us, but they've still sent us some pictures as well, which is lovely. So let's make a start anyway. And by the way, we've got those people at home, and some of them I know have sent us some pictures in. We've also, I know, got Sonny and Paul, and I'd like to share, at some point we'll go to them and ask them with their wide experience of fitting, installing and erecting antennas for members around the county. We'll get some of their experiences first. But in the order though which we received them, the first antenna picture I got was from Paul, G3SEM. Now, as well as having the picture, if we could show that, do you think, Tammy, please?
We can.
Because we have got Paul at home, and I wonder if Paul might, rather than me read his words, whether Paul would like to tell us in his own words what his antenna array is all about.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear me, David.
Yes, we can hear you fine, Paul. Nice to see
Jolly
you.
good. And you haven't given me a duration, so I'm going to witter on until you stop me.
All right. Well, if I make the circular hand movement like a floor manager, you'd understand that, wouldn't you? So I'll do that.
I don't know, can't see you at the
Oh,
moment.
that's true. Okay.
But there you are. Right, anyway, I'll crack on. Let's go for a couple of minutes. First of all, if you need a good aerial, you need planning permission. I managed to get planning permission to put this 60-foot crank up mast in a conservation area. I had to go to appeal, but it was a long story. But South Norfolk, collapsed their argument when I said, well, you've allowed all these houses to be built in a conservation area. What did you expect? They had no answer to that. The mast actually is a radio structures mast from Northampton. And it 16 years ago was £2,700. So that was relatively cheap, cheaper than the Versatowers. At the bottom is a 2 meter square of concrete weighing approximately 10 tons.
10 tons?
Mm.
Wow.
And the specifications for the aerial are self-supporting, but I do guide the bottom section for extra stability. The whole of the garden is crisscrossed with radials. There's about 50 on the base of that aerial, mast and aerial. Starting from the top, I have a short vertical collinear for 2 and 70 centimeters. I next have a 8-element J-beam for 2 meters. Still having problems with getting the right sort of preamp on it. And below that, the step IR 3-element beam for 20 through to 6 meters, complete with balance, process rotator, and the feeders are EcoFlex 10. I've also got a step IR vertical elsewhere in the garden. Doesn't take a very good picture, actually, with 50 radials around that. So that's the setup. Quite happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Paul. Well, I don't know if we'll get people asking any questions about it, but if we may, if you're staying with us, we'll come back to you with that. So if you have a question for any of Paul's antenna array there, drop them either on Facebook or on BATC, and we'll read them back to Paul and ask him. Just mention that it was Paul's antenna, though, because we're going to see quite a lot this evening. Thank you very much for joining us, Paul.
Not at all. Good evening.
Really good to see you. Okay, so now we're actually going around now to Tony M0TDK, as you know, who's also here. So let's see pictures of him, and let's go over to Tony. You did write quite a lot here, Tony, which I'm happy to read out, but if you'd like to talk us through it yourself, then that might be better. So you're live now on NARC Live.
Well, on the right you can see my that's a tenor mast. I think it's a 10-meter tenor mast. I got it, I wouldn't say second-hand, it was probably older than that, but it cost me £100, and that included the rotator and the rotator cage, so that wasn't a bad deal. On top of that, there is a Moseley CA33JRN, which is a 3-band, it's a 20, 15, and 10 meter. And it's a very good antenna, and they're also very robust. You can get spare parts for it. I would, if you want a reasonably priced but very effective antenna, I would go for Moseley every time, and I like it a lot. Above that, there's a 2-meter 77s collinear. You can't really put much more load on a tenor mast because that one does tend to sway around a bit. So when the wind gets up, I have to go out and wind it down. Moving further to the left, you can see a vertical, which is the sort of middle of the 3 sticking up bits. I forget what make it is. It isn't very effective. Which means it's probably just as well I can't remember who made it. It has an unan at the base, and it's claimed it doesn't need any radials. Cynics would say it's not very effective with or without radials, but anyway. And on the left, you can see a pole which is sort of holding up the middle of my, they call it a Windham. It's EA Antennas Windham. And this thing is 82 meters long.
Wow.
Which is quite a length. The left-hand end of it is the short end, and the right-hand end goes a long way down the garden. Until recently, there was a tree under the middle of the right-hand bit, but I managed to trim that back. And as a result, it works a lot better. The pole that's holding it up is the remains of a spider beam, which was on top of the antenna mast until the wind had a go at it. So I'm using the poles from a spider beam to hold up that. And you can see a sort of thickening bit at the top. And that's some kind of balun which EA supply. So it's coax fed all the way to the top of the pole. And it works very well. It's particularly effective on 40 meters. I've worked New Zealand on 40 meters with only 10 watts, which impressed me. Probably surprised them as well, but anyway.
Yes, 10 watts, yeah.
What you can't see here is my house, which is behind those sheds. You can see the chimney on the left above the N and Y of Tony. You can just see the chimneys, which is my house. And the shack is in there. So I've got quite a long piece of feed. I think from the top of the antenna mast, it's about 150 foot from there to the shack. And I use, I can't remember the name of it. It's not Westflex, but it's a good quality coax. And it works very well. I don't think I have much loss between the house and the antennas. But overall, between the Windham and the Moseley antenna, it all works very well.
And you mentioned in your email that you use a Yaesu rotator as well.
Yes, I can't remember what brand or what variety of the Yaesu rotator it is because it came with a antenna mast. I mean, the thing on the other end in here is a G400RC rotator controller. That might tell experts what sort of rotator is, but it's getting quite long in the tooth now, and every now and then it spits a ball bearing out, and I find it in the lawn. But it still works.
Good. Well, Tony, thanks. Yeah, no, it's really good. I mean, what we're encouraging everybody as well. I mean, I know quite a few of you have sent pictures in, but the idea of tonight really is to exchange, experiences as well as the antennas that you've got, so that we can help others. We're going to come to smaller aerials as well. Don't worry, in a while. And we've also got
the antenna mast itself. I mean, I dug the hole to put it in. They say a cubic meter, and I dug that by hand, so I can tell you it's quite a big hole.
Yes.
And you mix yourself some concrete and put it in, and put the liner into which the mast goes. It's not difficult to do. You just don't want to do it too quickly.
Yeah. Tony, thank you very much indeed for sharing your antenna array and all the equipment as well that goes with it. Now, the next person we don't actually have here, so I'm going to read the words that he sent us. This is actually Nigel 2E0NLK. I think, though, a few months ago we featured his new, I think this is a relatively new mast in his garden, because he told us all about it and he'd had people helping him put it up. So this is, he says, the photo of the aerials in his garden on top of a 40-foot antenna mast. The bottom one is a TA33 Moseley beam, which I think is what Tony just mentioned, for 10, 15 and 20 metres, but will also work for 6 metres. This used to belong to Pat, G3IOR, and the middle one is a 5-element J-beam for 6 metres, thanks to Robert Scarf for giving it to him, and also to Tony G0MQG for repairing the top, for help for repairing it. The top vertical is for 270, and the white box fitted to the tower is for the Carolina Windham, which is 133 feet. That goes to chimney and dogleg back, and the other end goes to a tree at the bottom of the garden and drops down. So that's really good to see. And I think, as I said, that's relatively new for Nigel. And he had fairly compact space to fit all that in, but very good. Thank you for sharing that. Now, someone else who can't join us tonight, but because they're doing the contest, is Roger G3LDI, but he was able to share his array. As many of you know, he's got quite a system there. I think he's still waiting to put some things up. But anyway, I'll read the notes that he's put for this picture. There's a couple of pictures, I think, actually. He says my antenna situation is a bit sad at the moment because I had a problem with the Step IR 4-element beam and took it off the main 120-foot tower. I lost the top tower supporting the far end of the rhombic, and this pulled the rhombic apart. I also lost the halyards on the two 80-foot towers supporting the rhombic. So, I'm left at present with the remains of the rhombic plus two inverted V dipoles for 80 and 160 metres. I tune the random wire for other bands. The 80-foot crank up near the shack, I don't know if that's, yeah, I think that's the next one, Tammy, actually, yeah, has the 402 BA 2-element beam for 40 metres on it, but that is incomplete at the moment. I've since sold the Step IR and will wait until the spring to rejuvenate the whole antenna farm. However, here are a few pictures of what was. We should point out that the person on there is Roger.
I thought it looked like Roger.
I mean, I wouldn't do it at my age, let alone Roger. But anyway, I better read all of this actually because I think he goes into some of this. But he says this shows him bolting the top 40 foot onto the bottom 40 foot of one of the 80-foot towers. How do you do that? Go up there and then bolt the top 40 foot onto the bottom 40 foot. I mean, you haven't got enough hands to, and the strength to do that. Anyway, I had to bolt the first 40 foot to the base and then climb that to receive the second 40 foot and then climb that to take off the crane strop. There we go. I still wouldn't want to do it. Obviously, I had to do that twice as there are two 80-foot side towers for the rhombic. Wow. The other two pictures show the, and I think have we got one? Oh no, they're the ones to show the 120-foot tower. One is a general view of the QTH taken from Jeff's G4ODC drone. I think we're going back. Can we go show that other picture, Tammy, please? Yeah, for drone. And the other shows me climbing the 120-foot tower. I used to cable tie the cables to the legs of the tower. When I put the new antenna up, I shall use a drop cable, messenger, and tie the cables to that so that I don't have to climb the tower in future. And in brackets he's put, I have been told not to by several people, including my daughter. I should think not. The dipoles are normally hoisted onto a crosspiece at the top of the tower. Yeah. That's still amazing. Can we just see that picture of Roger again? Oh my goodness me. Very good, Roger. Thanks for sharing that. And I think your daughter's absolutely right, though. Shouldn't be doing that again. What a view he must have got, though. Yeah. Someone else who unfortunately can't join us tonight is Mark G0LGJ, but he sent us some pictures and said, and this is where I was saying to everybody that this doesn't have to be all big stuff in the garden with masts, because Mark hasn't got HF antenna at the moment at home, but he does do a lot of driving, as you may know, for his job. So he's fitted an HF station to his car. With limited space and electrical noise at home, I've always enjoyed HF mobile operation. Okay, so the remote station may be doing a lot of the work, but the contact still has to be made. I have run various antenna type from single band Pro-Am whips, approximately 4 foot of loading coil, and then another 5 foot or so of stainless steel whip, and these work extremely well. And the majority of his 220 plus countries worked from the car is with this type of antenna on the higher HF bands. He moved to screwdriver antennas because you could always guarantee that the station you wanted to work was on another band to the single band antenna that you've already got on your car. Currently he has a little Tar Heel 2 covering 80 to 6 meters depending on the length of the whip, and it's controlled in the car. From a start position, I can count in seconds the time to get to the required band and then fine-tune with a small amount of RF. He also uses an outbacker, and this is with a jumper selection to get the correct bands. I don't think we've got a picture of that one. Works well and a lot less antennas to carry. Both need a solid mount and a good ground connection to the car. And mobile antennas limited on 80 and 40 meters as to the coverage of the band. Could not tune it CW and expect SSB operation. Thank you very much for those.
We've got to just go to
I think we have, haven't we? Paul, we get it. That's what we call in the TV trade an idiot board, isn't it? And I'm the idiot, and I'm reading it, and everybody else has just seen it, so they all know what an idiot board is now. Apparently,
stand by for the unexpected. All the best. Must go.
Thank you ever so much for joining us, Paul. All right, thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye. Just told everybody what an idiot board is. Probably shouldn't have done that. Never mind.
Maybe you shouldn't.
Apparently Terry Wogan used to have used them, but he didn't like anybody knowing.
Oh, really?
And certainly didn't like them being called idiot boards. But anyway, I shouldn't really tell you that.
How do you know that?
Because I know someone who works on that programme at the old Shepherd's Bush Theatre. Anyway, let's now look at next pictures. We've got from Alan G800. And he says, further to NARC Live on Wednesday the 29th of September with Steve G0KY's excellent talk about the end-fed half-wave antenna, he thought he'd give one a go. So he says, I thought, okay, let's try one. I'll put it on my second station, which is devoted to FT4 and FT8. Listen for the boos. No, not that sort of boos. Anyway, Alan purchased an 80 to 10 meter end-fed long wire, 400 watts for SSB and CW, and 200 watts on data from a company called UK Antennas at a very reasonable cost. If we could see the next picture, Tammy, I think people can see the closer up the box that's made for it. He says, I spent yesterday morning, he wrote this last week to me, excuse me, I spent yesterday morning putting the end-fed long wire in the air, and it was strung directly between two 21-foot scaffold poles. And I must say, on the first tests were impressive, where I had a VSWR of 1 to 5 to 1 on 80, 40 and 10, as well as 50 meters and 1 to 1 to 1 on 30, 20 and 17 and 15 meters using the FT991A ATU. This morning, which was the 8th of October, he says, I tried it out on 20 meters using FT8 and came across two Australian stations calling CQ. So I gave them a call, VK4ZC, at 5:51 a.m. and he was received on a send report on 16 and received on 6, and VK4ZV at 5:59 a.m. using the FT991A and 95 watts. Not bad for a small pistol setup, HI. My thought on this multiband 80 to 10 meter end-fed antenna is that it really works, but it's very long at 39 meters or 129 feet, and it can of course be bent to fit your garden, and it could act as a covert antenna, as at 21 feet you can hardly see it against the sky, and would be great for many locations. And by the way, he says that he worked lots of different countries on the end-fed long wave in less than a week. And there's the table. Now, I know he probably is struggling to see some of that detail at home, but it is quite a table for a new antenna. And it's a very similar design. I mean, Steve kindly told us how to make our antenna, very, very similar to do that. But you can see just how effective it is. And dare I say, it's the sort of thing that'd be pretty stealthy so that people wouldn't necessarily know about it. I wonder if, I know Steve is at home now on Zoom, and maybe we could cross to him now just for any comments about this. This was Alan's, as far as I know, first experience of end-fed long wires. So, Steve, this must be music to your ears.
Well, it's great to hear that it's worked for him. It really is, and it's just goes to prove that the antenna does work. It would be interesting to see someone build one themselves and get similar results. But as I said last week, if you build the transformer correctly and you have the right length of wire on it, it will go great guns. So I'm really pleased for him. Really pleased.
Well, thanks for your inspiration. I mean, he clearly says that's what inspired him to give it a go. Maybe he didn't feel that he could build one. But are you familiar with this UK antennas one?
No, I'm not actually. but everyone builds them pretty much the same formula now. I think the word has got out, and I can pretty much tell you what toroid they're using and what capacitor they've put in them, because everyone's just following the formula. And I'm not surprised at the SWR results, because I think I showed last week the plot of my 132-foot wire, and it gives you a low SWR everywhere, so it's good.
It's really good, yes. Well, we're going to mention, as you'll see as we go on, we're going to mention NFED long wires quite a bit more. So I hope if you're able to stay with us as well. If anybody's got any questions, maybe as follow-ups to your talk a few weeks ago, or to what people hear tonight, if you're going to be around, maybe we can come back to you as well.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
Thank you very much, Steve. Now, many of you know that Jim Bacon has got a well-known brother called Dick, G3WRJ, and he sent us some pictures of his setup. So let's have a look at those. So Dick says, I've enclosed a few snaps of my HF antenna. It's an inverted V doublet based on a ZS6 BKW, but with a shortened feeder. I leave it to you to choose views that best illustrate the takeaway point I wanted to make. So we'll show all of them, can't we?
Yeah, I've got all of them, yeah.
Yeah, the pictures there. Which is that even under an antenna shrouded and overlooked by trees and buildings will still get out, and with fine-tuning of operating techniques can still deliver some DX and put in a not too shameful mid-rank result in contests. For interest, he says my current 80-metre CW DXCC list is 89, so not bad for what could be described as a stealth antenna, in brackets he says, i.e. Steve KYA terminology. Thank you very much. Look at that. Yeah, all the different angles. I mean, it is straightforward, isn't it? And simple. And if you can't fit these, it's not for me to say what you should do or should not try to get planning for. But I mean, I would have thought an end-fed half wire, which is basically the piece of cable and one little box at one end. Maybe you could make it look like one of those linen line things that you put out or something like that. It's not going to upset anybody, I would have thought. But I'm not taking responsibility for it, but I think there's some real good case for these, and we'll hear about them again as well as we go on this evening. Now, it's really pleased to see that our next person who sent us some pictures is also on the Zoom call. So let's join. Is he still there? Yes. Is Victor still there? Oh, Victor. Yes, Victor's still there. Victor, can we come to you? Hello, Victor. Can you unmute, or we can unmute you, and then be nice to see you.
Yes. How's that? Okay.
Yes, lovely. So you sent me some pictures, and you talked about when you went on holiday down to Brighton, but maybe you'd like to talk us through it.
Yes, I've been a couple of times, last October and the October we're in now. I went last week down to Brighton and took my FT818 and the little Miracle Whip, just screwed on the back, and did a very small amount of operating. Definitely not a radio expedition when Audrey's with me. But it was great fun. On the first day, it was so cold. It was a really freezing gale. So I set it up just inside our room, 2-foot walls on this hotel on the front, by a window. And I could hear all this. To my surprise, I had a couple of QSOs, one down to Bulgaria and the other one, I think, was Spain. And so it was fun. But the next day, Wednesday, was gorgeous. So I was out on the balcony a couple of times, and on 20 meters in the first few minutes, went donk, 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 worked number of CW stations, and more distant stuff. I had an absolutely delightful rag chew on 5 watts of CW to a Miracle Whip with Nando just outside Madrid, who was very impressed. And he had a lovely Collins line set up, which you can see on his website. So that was quite good. When you use a Miracle Whip, you don't expect to work the DX, but just the pleasure of working. The advantage, of course, is that the whole lot just goes in a little bag. My 818 has its own leather case, which I put over my shoulder to keep close to me. Then I have a small bag which has chargers, a tiny key, and the aerial, and 1 or 2 bits and pieces, and that's it. Oh, and a pad to write things down. So it was great fun. Works well. I've done it before. I've done it on the hill up behind me here over in Bedfordshire with great results. my feeling was that I needed to do something which did not involve stringing wire around holiday properties. And I'm thinking now of the Warner's Leisure set up in Norfolk, just not far from yourselves. Pardon me. Where we go there because we have a cliff top chalet, a little cottage of our own with a whole row of them, feet from the edge of the cliff. So this last summer, I sat out on the sun lounger, table beside me with the little QRP rig, working away, and one or two people came to see what I was doing, but certainly more socially acceptable and easy to do compared with putting up a telescopic pole and running wires everywhere. So that's 2 or 3 years I've done that now. Very nice. What you're looking at there, the main picture, you can see the rig and the little US plastic keys, they printed up, the twin pedal there, and a pair of phones that I borrowed from Audrey's Walkman, I think. Very, very effective. Did I send you a second picture?
Yeah, we did show that a minute ago. There we are. There's the other picture.
Yeah, well, can you go back to the there we are. On that one, this year I decided I would need to lift it above the railings. So I got a second coffee table, a balcony coffee table, stacked them up, put it on it, and it was perfect. I could just see.
Oh, I see. Yes, I can see it now. I didn't notice that was a double table.
Two tables. Yeah,
because otherwise, I guess they would act as a bit of a screen for that antenna.
Well, yes, David, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So the table comes part of the balcony furniture. So I rang down. They brought me up another one, which I stacked up. Popped the rig on and off it went. You can see the pier in the background.
Marvellous. Yeah, that's lovely. It's a beautiful scene.
It was a beautiful day.
Yes, it really was. And it was just a few weeks ago, you said, did it?
This is last week.
Yeah. Oh wow. Right.
And Monday we got home Friday, and it was so nice. We went up on the British Airways stick later on, or in the mid afternoon, which of course you can see all around. It did occur to me that the rig and the Miracle Whip might work very well up at this enormous great height of, flying right up in the sky, which is, for those who don't know, there's like a stick down near the beach with a pod around it which goes slowly up, taking its passengers.
I'm getting a nods from my wife here, so she knows about that. I've never been up there, but
it's worth a trip, and they're charming. It's beautifully done, beautiful engineering. Yes. I think one of the first years we were down there, they were actually building it when all the ground, of course, was open. So underneath the ground, there was all the cables and the setups for working the thing. Last time on, last two pictures, I actually had, when I was living in Bunwell, just south of Norwich, a telemast, very great value. And it was part of my old system there. I had a 285-foot doublet hung from the mast to the house, then out across a lake behind my barn to a tree. On 80 meters, I could call CQ anywhere on QRP. I'm pretty sure of a reply. It was great. And then the other thing, when I went with Roger LDI, seeing the pictures reminded me, I wondered how he had any time at all for radio with all that mowing for his great
yes.
But rather him than me climbing up.
I think it is a bit like the Forth Bridge, I think, cutting his grass.
Well, I would think so.
Yes.
Anyway, there you are. There's the famed Miracle Whip, which of course you can't buy now, and the little FT8. One of my friends, OZ1TF, tipped me off on how to return the RF output when you're using a battery back to 5 watts, because normally it just drops to 2.5. But buzzy things to do. If you're only going to work short sessions, 5 watts was fine.
I think it's worth us pointing out, Victor, because we get all sorts of people with various experiences who watch this, and I think it's worth just pointing out that the FT818, which is a sort of successor to the 817, which had been going many years and was almost a classic, is really small. It's about the size in old terms of a sort of car radio, basically, isn't it? It's hard from that table shot maybe to actually see just how small they are, and they're self-contained with the batteries inside as well, aren't they?
Yeah. There's a bit of an A4 folded in half, and if I poke it into the thing here, the paper is bigger than the rig. That's top band down to 70 centimeters, except for, and it's a fabulous rig. Last October, gosh, it's a year now, I decided, age progressing as it is, I disposed of my Sda2000 and an enormous, gorgeous, the big Drake kilowatt tuner, bits and pieces to keep it simple. And the whole station now has a maximum of 20 watts output. The 818 and a tiny amplifier for QRP Labs, which GM4JMU very kindly made for me, but not for the 50 watt output. By coming down from 20 watts power supply to 12 volts, it puts out 18 watts on 17 meters, and then down about 14 watts on 30 around the other way. Then I can use it at about 10 watts output, which is not much more than the 5 or 6 watts of the set itself, on 20 and 40. That was because I was realizing that certainly a year ago, getting replies was becoming a problem at times if you wanted to break a pilot. Yes, I'd been back a few days, I wasn't getting there. I could hear the 3D alpha in South Africa weekly. But yesterday at tea time, there they were on 17 meters, nice and readable, working split with a humongous pile-up. So popped on the tiny amplifier for 18 and managed to slip behind underneath everybody, and he heard me. It took me 40 minutes, but there you are, QRP.
That's lovely, yes. Well, I'm glad as well that we've been able to show the contrast to the big antennas, wonderful though they are, but not everybody can have a mast and want a mast, you know, in their garden. And this is almost the other extreme, where you've just got there basically a very long telescopic aerial on a matching little unit that plugs into the back of that radio.
Right.
So if you're somebody who thinks there's no way I'm going to be able to have HF or anything like that, or do anything portable, then this is Victor's picture of his radio system. There is a great example. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, Victor.
Absolute pleasure.
One other thing, actually, before I go, I've got a comment from Rodney G0CBO, and says, "Amazing, Victor, shows what can be done with a simple setup." And I echo that. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
So now we've looked at a lot of the small systems, and we're gonna now take a slight change by going to Paul and Sunny, who are on our Zoom call, because I think for those who do want something a bit more big and beefy at home installed, they have become the Norfolk experts, and even going further than Norfolk, in fact, to do this sort of thing. And it'd be nice to get a bit of advice from them about how they've tackled various people's installations. So we'll come to you first, Sunny, if we may, and just give us a bit of advice. You know, when people come to you and ask you for helping them to put up a mast, or maybe they're thinking of getting a mast, and what sort of advice can you give them? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, David. Sorry, I didn't realise that not unmuted myself. The screen share is not relevant at this second in time. That's for Paul's bit a little bit later. Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of inquiries. For some reason, I seem to have become the single point of contact for the destruction crew. I don't quite know how that worked, but here we are. So the first inquiry is always, can you help me with antennas? And the first question that I usually ask is caveated by Mr. KYA, was, well, what do you want to do? And it's, you know, there's always this question within HF, VHF, UHF, SHF as to what are your aspirations for amateur radio? You know, do you want to do EME? Do you want to do, you know, all sorts of questions. Obviously, we're sticking with HF, so we'll stick with that for now. Most of the time, it boils down to your plot size as to managing your expectations of what sort of antenna system you can have. And we'll show you at ZBA's, Paul ZBA's place, he's basically got as big of setup as you can physically have in what is basically, he'll probably correct me, it's like a 32 meter by 9 to 10 meter wide plot, which obviously isn't very big. It's a standard sort of size. Jim Bacon YLA has got a similar plot size. That's an average sized plot. There are those that are fortunate. Tony, Vic's last place. Roger, Chris, DWV, who've got a little bit more land around them. TUK is another antenna system that obviously you've seen on NARC Live previously that we set up. And we just go from there, really, David. So I'll let you come back and save me ranting.
Thank you. Yeah,
I'll talk all night, David. You know me, so
well,
I'll fill as much as you want me to. So
I love it. No, but we have got lots, but it's nice to think from the installation point of view. And what you've clearly shown there is that people need to think first about what they want to do. And not just even the bands, but you mentioned EME even and things like that. Some people may have watched the RSGB convention the weekend when we looked, and one of the talks was about amateur satellites. And it's clear that you need to think about things like that if you think you're going to be interested in satellites and the sort of antenna that you're going to install. So it's really useful. I think this might be a good time. Do you think, Sonny, to go to Paul maybe and talk to him about his aspect of it?
Yeah, if we go through Paul's ZBA's run through of his shack, you'll have to bear with us. We haven't practiced this. I've got his photos.
Okay.
and he's going to remote talk. So
Okay.
I think we can manage that. We
you'll
weren't
have to
sure
bear
what was
with.
happening.
If it doesn't look too rehearsed, it's because it's not. We're going to wing it and see how we do. How we go. So over to ZBA anyway.
Hello, Paul. Just thinking, do you need to unmute?
Yeah.
He's unmuted. Hang on. Unmute yourself, Paul. Bottom of the screen.
We can't do it, Paul. We have unmuted you, but we can't.
There you go.
There we are. We can hear you, Paul.
Testing.
Lovely.
Hello everybody. As Sonny said, really, we've got we do our level best to help as many people as we can. We've had all sorts of trips up and down the country. We went off to Scotland not long ago, where we had to disassemble a master system of which you saw the high-speed photographs. We took it with Chris and one or two others. We took a master system apart in Lincolnshire, then ferried it up to Scotland, and we're about to put it all back together. But the chap, luckily, well, for us, didn't want it put together at the time. So that's it. So there are things from local all the way across to Scotland. But there was almost going to be a Welsh trip on the way back as well.
Mm-hmm.
What we've got there is a picture of what we've been doing over the last few weeks, really. You may well have seen that RS-BA1 ICOM remote software before. Now, Paul, who's also on the call, he actually asked us, M1AFQ, if we could look into setting up his 7300 for remote operation so that he could take the thing out into the sticks and operate from the car. And we spent some considerable time trying to find an interface for the key. Basically, you have to use, I don't know if you can wave, I've got the most. Can you see my screen, Dave?
Yes, we can see that fine, yes.
Yeah, oh, good, you can see them. Okay. Right, we had to use, is that you moving it, Sonny, or me?
That's me, Paul. Carry on.
It's definitely not us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, where Sonny's got the most at the moment, that's ICOM's remote software CW interface. We would really like to have had the ability to plug a key in, either straight or a paddle. But it seems that ICOM just hasn't considered this, which is really strange. But it's a great piece of software. It runs on most of the ICOM range. But you have to use their sort of software interface there. We use keyboard. You obviously read yourself, or you can cheat, as I do, as you can see there on the little bit above with CW Get, where that all gives a confirmation.
Paul, I don't want to interrupt, but doesn't that software also, you can buy it with a box that sort of remotely, doesn't it sort of simulate the controls and the main tuning control and things on the radio as well, or do you have to have that?
If only, David. Now, at the moment, we've been to Paul's today, and we did some work, and we've been working here for the last few days. We have that interface, that little knob, something 28, Sonny, it's called, isn't it?
RC20, remote control 28 or something like that.
RC28. It's a nice little bit of kit. It's a box about this size with a knob on it and some buttons, a bit like the Flex one or a bit like the Woodbox one, which I've got sitting here for other software. It's great, David. It works brilliant for tuning and for PTT and for audio. But no, it doesn't do CW. Unfortunately, you can't plug a microphone into it. You can't plug a key into it, which is very frustrating, really, considering how much effort ICOM have put into this thing.
And it's not
So-
cheap, is it? It's about best part of £300, I think, for the two, isn't it? The software in the box.
Absolutely, it's
Yeah.
ludicrously expensive. Actually, the software in the box, the best part of £300. But Paul, all good to Paul. He's bought the stuff. Version 2, great piece of software. Nice little box. We've got it plugged in downstairs in Shack B, where Sonny and I had been doing the remote from Shack B up to Shack A, which is where I'm sitting at the moment, and you're partly looking at there. Underneath the monitor there, on the right-hand monitor, is the stepper, which we'll come to in a second, the stepper control box. Very similar to Paul's. Actually, I've got a similar setup now to what Paul had. There we go. There's my stepper box. Yeah, Sonny, press 6 meters so you can switch it to 6. Oh no, you can't do that. We can do it normally because we run Team Viewer and he can control everything. All of the kit here is remote controllable, so you can Sonny can control the stepper, all of the computer functions, the rotator, and everything else. So everything is automated. Right, that brings us on to outside. This is the back of my little bungalow in Old Canton, and that mast there is one of the ones we picked up from Chris, DWV. Thanks, Chris, for a reasonable price. That base plate is stupendously heavy. That's a 1 meter cube of concrete there, which I think, like one of the other chaps said earlier, Victor, I think, that weighs about, well, ain't quite 10 tons, or Paul's was 10 tons. That's 1 meter cubed, which is probably about 3 tons. Wow.
That's a lot of concrete to mix up for yourself if you're doing it that way.
That certainly is. Luckily, I've got a brother who's a builder.
Handy.
and he works like an Irishman as well. He can really dig holes. So he dug the hole and put the concrete in the space of about 3 hours. Him and his lad who works with him. Right, we're looking up at the mast. It's not a very big mast. It's about sort of 45 feet, 3-section, versatile type thing. But I have a postage stamp of a garden, really. Sonny, did you do the?
No, I haven't done the overhead shot, but let's say
okay. We were going to do a Google Earth view of the plot. When as he said really earlier, it's about 100 feet by 30 feet, of which you can use for the long wire. But the actual plot in the back garden is tiny, 20 feet square, a bit like Jim's, where we've got the mast. And when we fully retract the mast into its down position and lean it over, we can just get to the head. The head unit fits the side wall, and then the antenna, the niff-naff and tribute at the top. If you pointed the vertical, Sonny, see at the V2000, the 5 meter long one. That sticks about 15 feet into my neighbour's garden with her kind permission, and so that does well hang over. The end of the stub mast here, which is only about 4 feet, that gives us that's just on the edge of my property, so that we can get to that. You may notice there are no birds on this, and my previous setup was riddled with birds. Then we put this American stuff that I bought, Bird Be Gone. Absolutely brilliant stuff. It's a bit like a liquid gel. It doesn't hurt the birds, It must let off some kind of scent as well as it being tacky, because they don't come near it. They don't even land. That's now been there a year, and I had barely a single bird land on that before we were covered in droppings. Because as you saw, my back door is at the bottom, right where that foot of that tower is.
Yeah.
And that was a nightmare. It really was. So that's just in passing. That Bird Be Gone, brilliant stuff. Really good. £15 a tube, something like that. Great. And everything, every vertical, every element that you can see there, facing upwards, we put a strip of Bird Be Gone on. So it's all of the 2 meter beam, the step IR with the two, just wave at the 2 passive elements, Sonny, that we added as well. So it's actually a 4 or 5 element on 6 meters, and then 3 elements on everything from 6 right the way down to 20 meters. That is a fantastic antenna. It really is good. Of all the things we've had, and my previous setup was almost exactly the same as one of the other setups that one of the other lads put up earlier, with the tenor mast and the Moseley Junior. I had that for 20, 30, 40 years. Right,
another vote for Moseley then, because there's a lot of fans of Moseley's tonight.
Yeah, they were great. That was a great bit of kit. In the last about 3 years ago, I had a Cushcraft A3 similar antenna. You can put a bit more power into it. It's an American spec antenna, so you can run a kilowatt into it if you're so inclined. This one you can run 1500 watts into, but I don't do anything like that. I just run the 200 or 300 watts that we're allowed. You can see the wire antenna going left and right. Now that is a doublet. It's an 80-meter doublet. It's the G3CWI one. He just got a great little YouTube video, and he flogs you all them little spacing pieces you can see down there. That's it, Sonny, lovely. You get about 20 of those, and it comes all the way to the right outside my downstairs window. And those, they all come in the kit, and you get 100 meters. Was it 100 or 50 meters?
50 meters.
50 meters, 150 feet of cable. You cut this cable in half, so all the way from this bottom connector where you can see the little connector, all the way to the far end, each leg is one piece of wire, so that you've got no problems with things breaking, stretching, pulling apart. It works absolutely brilliantly. It's easily the best of the wire antennas I've ever put up. So we've got about 130 feet in total of wire horizontally. And then we've got, probably about 40 or 50 feet of wire down there to make up the balance feeder. Inside the house, we've got an auto tuner. It's an MFJ auto tuner with a balanced output, a balun in the back, and that is great. But just as you can see, just wave to the loop there, Sonny. What you can see here is the bottom part of a loop, and we'll come with the next set of pictures now, really. Right. That other one was okay.
Sorry, there you go.
That's it. Right. That's looking at under the carport in my back garden with my garages and the solar panels and all the rest. Now this is, I bought it about a year ago. I think it's about a year ago. I bought two actually. Peter, who's a fantastic engineer. If you've ever had anything to do with Peter, he's an absolute gem of an engineer. That's G4KLM. He makes a range of, we did make a range of Morse keys, and he made a range of other things, including these beautifully made, or kit form or made. This one was one that he completely made. That goes from 30 meters to 10 meters, HF loop. That's in my Shack B, which we'll have a picture of in a second. Just sitting on one of the cheapy Yaesu rotators. That great little bracket. Just point at that bracket, Sonny. Equally, Peter made that bracket as well. It's great. It's got a hinge at the bottom, which is a small hinge there. It's one of those Russian pulls you buy down at the rallies. And then he's got a bracket with a screw in. You unscrew that screw and you lean the thing down and just sit on the back of a chair. And absolutely fabulous for maintenance. You can you just rotate the actual antenna round, take the cover off. It's got a very, very good, you could run 400 watts into this thing. It's got one of the extremely good Russian vacuum variable valves in it. And Peter decided he didn't want to do it anymore, so I bought this one, and I bought the 80-meter one. It's an 80-40-30. Well, it does from 80 to 30 meters continuously, and this one does 30 to 10 meters continuously. So it's great on the broadcast bands as well, which I really like. Just pop to the inside one, Sonny. One of the inside pickies. Right, okay. That's Shack B there. That little box on the left, that's the inside controller of Peter's box. I did write down here, yeah. It's, if anyone wanted to look it up to actually build the kits and everything, the full spec for this loop system is TF3 LJ. So that's Tango Foxtrot number 3, Lima Juliet is the actual designer. Peter then took his design and built it into a proper job piece of kit. Now you can use the encoder knob there if you want to tune the loop, but equally it's using. There was a picture of the software running, weren't there, Sonny? I think we have got it running there. That's Ham Radio Deluxe. Ham Radio Deluxe is just linked straight through to the box on the left there, the Signal Link USB box. The one, that's it, the one above it, Sonny, just above it. That's it, back to where you were, that's it, yeah. Now that's controlling that's an audio sound card for connecting FT8, RTTY, PSK, or any other data mode you like. They're great little boxes of tricks. So there's 2 USB ports, one for that, one for the mag loop. I don't know if there's a picture of the radio, there may not be, but the software that's running there on the screen is the remote control software for Ham Radio Deluxe. And you just tune away there or set it as you will. And the HF mag loop tracks just simply follows as you tweak it, you can hear you can hear the little the capacitor spinning away outside, and then there's the rotor controller there for the loop itself. That last thing really there is that the little the mouse that's on the screen there. I use 2 of them. They're great little things. If anyone wanted to use one for tuning, which is what I did, it's a Kensington piece of kit. It's a trackable, and that works really well. The outer tuning knob below the ball, so it works as a mouse. But that other thing is you turn it, tunes the radio. So it's a bit like having a tunable radio knob, which is a nice bit of kit. I've got a couple of them, one downstairs and one upstairs in Shack A and Shack B. Is it, Sonny? Have we covered most of the pictures?
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I think that's it. I'll pick the backside out of it, really.
Well, no, it's brilliant. It's a really, really good insight into, your antenna system. Because I know you go and do these things for others, but it's nice to know that at home as well, you've got all these different ones. The Meg Loop, I think, is something, I think you're the only one from what I've seen who's got one who's going to talk about it tonight or show their pictures tonight. How do you find that? Because they take a heck of a lot less space than anything else, pretty much, don't they?
They certainly do. I mean, I think it's great. It's a great piece of kit. Is it as good as the stepper at 45 feet? Of course not. But I would say it's every bit as good as a dipole. For 20 meter dipole, and this works from 30 meters up to 10. So any of the dipoles, it works just as well, with the advantage of being out a rotator, so that you can either null out any interference or increase any signals. So I do find it to be a great piece of kit. I've got 2 actually. There's an 80 meter one as well. But what you do need to do, and it has been covered before in great detail, because Steve's talked about it lots of times, KYA, is that the efficiency of these loops, as you come down in frequency towards 80 meters, you're looking at maybe only sort of 4 or 5% efficient compared to a dipole. But when you've got from 30 meters up to 10 meters, they're really quite good. And on 10 meters, the things are really very good. It works 70-80% efficient. They're really good. Yes. There we are, David.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks to you, Paul, and also to Sonny, of course, because I know you're going to do this stuff together, and you've done a double act again tonight with the pictures and everything from your shack. So thanks very much for sharing, both of you.
Yeah, well, David, as a continuation, just from that point of view, this carport is the opposite side to the garden to where Paul's mast is, and it is actually a problem when it comes to luffing the tower over, because the elements of the beam have to be manipulated round the carport in order for us to work on any of the antenna systems. But it was just a quick mention that this left-hand side post here that's currently got a temporary weather station on it, this is kind of where we try temporary antennas. We've done NVEDs from here. There's an actual external tuning unit up here that we use to tune up some antennas and different bits and pieces. So this is sort of antenna field number 1 at Paul's, and it's the only room that we've really got where we've got a vertical pole to strap anything to, just to try a range of all sorts of HF antennas. And it's been a great fun experiment with just a piece of wire to the 3LE stepper, which is a very nice piece of kit. But it was just that mention to say that it's not all big boys and big guns in this particular garden. There's a lot of experimental antennas that go on, and HF antennas that go on in this particular plot anyway.
That's great. Thank you ever so much for sharing, both of you.
And I think if you bear with me, I might eventually I'll be able to find a picture of Paul's previous A3S with birds on it. So you can come back to me.
We'll come back to you for that. All right. Okay. Now, the next person we're going to look at are pictures, actually. I'm going to mess up Tammy a little bit, because I can see he's sitting there at home. And I think Jim's quite in depth in the... Jim, would you like us to come to you, or are you ready? Are you busy with the contest?
No, you can come to me. That's all right. I'll just finish this one here, like that.
Oh, well, it's a live contest. All right.
And is that. Hopefully no one will come back. Oh, yes, they have just come back to me.
Well, that's okay,
anyway,
because you've written lots up for this, and what I can do is, if it's all right with you, I could read the words that you've got with each picture, and then maybe if you want to come in at any time, or come in at the end, you know, do so, if that's all right, because I know you did say you were going to be taking part in the contest tonight, and I totally understand that. So that's what we'll do. And just a reminder to everybody at home now watching this, I hope you're finding it useful. And but for those of you who haven't put in pictures and things, that's all right, because this is all about a two-way exchange, sharing information about our different antenna systems and things. So if you've got any questions, we'll put them either to the people who've got the antennas, or we've got a guru in Steve G0KY here as well. So if you've got any questions about any of these antenna systems or anything else to do with HF antenna, that's really what we're talking about tonight. So let's now go and see some of Jim G3YLA's pictures. A few weeks ago, you will have seen that Sonny and Paul, who we just seen, did go round to Jim's and help him put these antennas up. So let's have a look at some of those. So,
well, shall I talk you through them?
If you're happy to, yes. I don't want to interrupt your contesting there.
No, I've come to a bit of a hiatus with things at the moment. I'm fighting 3 stations who all think I'm working them, and I'm not. So, right, okay. Well, that first picture that you've got up there on the left is a hex beam, a second-hand hex beam on a piece of fibre pole. And the fibre pole was an offcut of something I had kicking around, and it was hand rotated. So there were 2 K clamps on the garage wall, and the thing is no more than, as you can probably guess, about 5 feet, 6 feet above the ground. And that aerial, that hex beam, works really well. So it's an encouragement with some aerials to try them even if you haven't got a big mast, so don't give up hope. But that allowed me to work across the states on 20 and have regular long rag chews and things, and that was really good. But then the next picture shows the next stage in the development was to get a tubular steel or a square section, box section steel 3-section mast, which was bolted to the garage in the same place, and it has a G450 rotator on it, the Geishu rotator with a thrust bearing in it. And I put it on the top and got a lot more height, and it worked better still. But just after the kind good works of Sonny and Paul helping with the aerial installation, I'm afraid the Gales sort of saw that one off, Dennis and who was the other one? Cairo, I think, in March last year, and then we all got locked down. So the whole thing was a bit of a shambles. What happened was the hex beam was a second-hand one, probably many years old, and it had been installed fairly close to Heathrow Airport, and I think corrosion and pollution had degraded some of the bits and pieces. But anyway, the strong winds eventually did for it, and that came down. So next picture, we should see a mast that the gang, the demolition crew, helped me put up on the end of the house, which is a pole, an aluminium pole on brackets with a cross piece and 2 pulleys. One contains, on the right-hand side, with the ladder line feeder coming down, is a doublet, an 80-metre sort of half-wave size sort of thing. And that goes down to the bottom of the garden. And to the front of the house, it goes to a short stub mast, which has the TV aerial on it. And that's sort of more or less on the street. So it goes parallel to the ridge of the house. So it's not awfully high, but it is about 4 or 5 feet above the ridge tiles. And then it comes down to a buddleia bush, which I don't know if we see a picture of the bush in the front garden, and that's halfway between the house and the street. And you can see the left-hand one; it goes more or less into the buddleia bush. The buddleia bush is for the chop. Actually, that's got out of control, but I'll have to find somewhere else to hang the front end of it. Anyway, the right-hand picture is the mast at the bottom of the garden, the back garden, on the right-hand end, right-hand corner. And that's one of these 6-metre fibre masts you see advertised in the back of Radcom in the classifieds. Very useful mast. You can get them in 2 sizes. I think the 2 sizes slot into each other, so they make good masts to slot together. But that one has got tiny amount of flex in it, but it's okay for a single wire, and I've used the multi-strand plastic covered flex weave for the doublet. And then it goes off at right angles to the left, and we'll see another picture which shows it going into some trees possibly. Well, yeah, the one on the left, you can't see where it goes, but it goes in there, and there's another one of those masts sitting in the trees. And I've got some you know, you can get these metal clamps that clamp round a concrete fence post. They've got sort of ridges in them. Well, if you put the clamp on as if you're going to hang a plant pot on it, you can also use big industrial strength cable ties and tie one of these fibre poles to it. So that takes the other end. And then a later development is to put VHF arrays on that crank-up mast. So there's a 23 centimetre beam on the left, and there's a 2-metre beam on the right. And then a new hex beam, which I've bought to replace the old one, which corroded and fell apart, is going to go sitting just on top of that. I have to say the hex beams are brilliant. Anthony, who does them, is just fantastic. And I've written his call sign on the bit of paper, but I can't. MW0.
I've got it here somewhere.
Just seen that.
Oh, I've just seen that. And I'm just trying to. I've been trying to keep up with the
MM0CUG.
Yeah.
No, that's Gary who does the masts.
Oh right, MW0JZE.
JZE, yeah, that's the fella. And both those two are really, really helpful and supportive. If you give them if you contact them, they certainly will give you advice and on all the rest of it.
And
so,
if you are interested at home now, just sorry, Jim, but I will give you the web address of that hex beam from MW0JZE, and this is, if you've got a bit of paper handy, this is it. It's www.g3txq-hexbeam, all one word, .com. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, and I have to say the hex beam for a small garden looks looks pretty sort of scary, but once it's up in the air, it's okay. And the nice thing is that mast, when it comes down like that, everything sits down behind the trees, so it's not too bad. So anyway, it's bits of wire and things fitting into a small garden, and I think I've got a couple of pictures showing the construction of the aforesaid.
Well, that was Paul and Sonny, look, in evidence.
There are the boys, Sonny and Paul in action, giving me some help and moral support and physical support to get everything all together there. So you can see how the mast, when it's tilted over, there's 2 winches on it. One is an electric winch which puts the thing up and down, which I can operate remotely from the shack just by pointing out the window here. The crank over one is a hand winch, and you can see it just about comes down. But you can imagine, if you look at that now, you could picture in your mind how the hex beam would look on its side there. So that clearly isn't a way to do it. And the big flat plate near Sonny's arm in the center of the picture, that is a tilt plate which actually rotates the whole arrangement so the aerials come up into the vertical when you're working on them. And if you've got something like that in a small garden, it's really invaluable to have that. Anyway, point is, it's really, really good to have a go at aerials, even if you don't think they'll fit in, even if you think you're going to have dog legs, and even if you think discretion means that you don't want them too high up in the air most of the time. Most of the time, that thing is retracted, and I work perfectly well. I can work into GM on 2 meters with it, and I can that's with the VHF stuff. And on 23 SEMs, I get into the middle of the country, so it's pretty good. So small gardens, just try it, and if you've got a bit of wire lying around, just try that, and have a look at Steve's book and see what you can find about how to get a resonant aerial. A good aerial, that's with the mast up, by the way, with the VHF arrays on it. So it's a thing of beauty.
Yeah, that is nice, isn't it?
But of course, it's not necessarily everybody's taste, but that's my thing of beauty. So the point is about aerials, and to anybody who's sort of worrying about aerials and not having the right sort of place for them, just go ahead and try something. Even try sloping dipoles and things hanging from a bedroom window. I did a lot of work, like Victor, I'm a big fan of QRP, and I did a lot of work on 40 meters QRP using an inverted V dipole on 40. This is 40 meters only. And I had an inverted V, but a V shape going down to the two end posts at the bottom of the garden, not the raised ones, but the fence posts from a bedroom windowsill. And I've worked over 100 countries on 40 meters on 5 watts. So you don't need big aerials to get out and do things, and that's really the deal. But obviously, you know, if you get a chance to fit something in and experiment with it, then have a go. But big thumbs up to Sonny and Paul for their support. They're great fun to work with, and it's such a laugh when we have our sessions over here that you know, it's really enjoyable, and they're so sort of thorough and professional in what they do. They make sure there's no sloppy stuff going on with not having the right connectors and not having everything ready. The worst thing you can do for those two is not having everything ready when they come round.
This is the Paul and Sonny's fan club, I think, here as well, isn't it?
Yeah, the demolition crew. We got the demolition crew.
How did you?
The really amazing thing is, David, is I haven't bribed any of them. I mean, this is just feedback. I mean,
I've just got to ask you one thing, because people just may be watching this for the first time and meeting you, and we talk about the demolition crew, might think we're almost insulting you, but why is it called the demolition crew when what you actually do is create things and build things, not generally take them down?
So there's a small story that goes with that. Just very quickly, while the bird be gone subject was on, let's just cover that off, and then I'll just do the story quickly. So this is Paul ZBA's Cushcraft A3S before we swapped it out for the 3-element beam for 6 meters. Can you actually see that? Is that right?
Yeah. That's
So this is before we swapped out. This is a small amount of birds compared to the G3 JTZ, G7 JTZ's antenna bird feeder at Spixworth. But this was just amusing because as I walked up the drive one day, this is what was sat on Paul G4ZBA's previous setup. But anyway, yeah. So the bird be gone has definitely worked because it used to be populated more than this as well. So yeah. So destruction crew. Well, the tidbit and the hat off really, and I think I'm right in saying, goes to Mr. G3 Mike Papa November David. For earmarking us the destruction crew after a certain session at another aforementioned G3 LDIs. A certain incident occurred with his main 120-foot tower in that I went round to Rogers, did the climb for him to 40 and 80 feet to remove his chocks to lower the tower down. That all went well. That was fine. Lowered the tower sections down. Okay, cool. There we go. Right, that's fine. So now we've got to tilt it over. So Roger's ground post is 22 feet tall. So, you know, it's a fairly substantial ground post, but most of these ground posts are 6 foot tall or, you know, 8 foot tall. So we go to luff the tower over, and the halyard bar that you saw in previous pictures of Roger's was mounted underneath his 4-element stepper. And what in fact happened is he'd put the 4LE stepper up on a tilt plate. He'd then climbed the tower to 120 feet, attached his halyard bar 20 years ago, fitted his halyards, and everything was gravy. Of course, 20 years later, when it came to remove said halyard bar to bring it down, it didn't tilt over because the halyard bar caught on the elements of the stepper, and the stepper had to be in a certain way because of the tilt plate. So it was sort of you can see everything's rolling here. So I had to then climb 40 feet in the air with a hacksaw in order to cut the halyard bar to make it come past the stepper so that we could get the head unit, which is 40 feet in the air, on the ground. I cut the halyard bar, of which Roger is still not forgiving me for, as far as I can make out. He still mentions it as often as he physically can. so that was that. So I'd cut his Duralium halyard bar that had 4 halyards on it, but there was no other option because it had to come down, because I couldn't get the bolts undone because they were rusted beyond all belief. You couldn't even get a nut or a spanner on any of them. And this is all at 40 feet in the air, by the way. So cut the bar, started tilting it over, and then it got to the point where the tower was level. So you've now got the ground post at about 20 feet. And you've got a 40-foot section, nicely balanced, teeter-totting on the middle here. And then, for no uncertain reason, that there was 3 of us on site. There was myself, ZBA, and LDI. And at the point where the top of the tower, being my hand, got to this point, the tower decided, oh, I can use gravity now, and did this. What unfortunately was missed throughout all of this process was that usually, for those that have got big towers, you chain the sections together. The reason you do that is to stop the thing sliding out when gravity takes over. Now, bearing in mind, when a 6-foot post is on the ground and the section slides on a 6-foot plane, it's not too big a deal because, you know, the section's then only about 3 foot off the ground and you can just push the sections back in. When this is a section that's 40 foot long and there's 3 of them making 120 feet and there is a post where the center is at 20 feet, you suddenly have this rather weighty object trajectory for the ground at a great rate of knots. And the LDI stepper took a, what would you say, Paul, 10 feet skip across his lawn until it ground to a gradual halt. At which point, for some reason, this was all mine, M0SYW, and Paul, G4ZBA's fault, because we'd forgot to remind the G3L that he needed to chain his sections before we tilt it over. A great lesson was learned that day, David, because the putting it back together was another fact that is another story for another day. But so that was how the Destruction Crew name started, but it was patented by Mr. David G3MPN, who we can only thank for as being the station manager. So apologies that wasn't a short story, but that's the short version of that story. It was about a 4-hour session on one afternoon where it all went horribly wrong, one thing after the other. So that's why we were earmarked the Destruction Crew. But as you say, quite rightly, most of the time, Rogers being the exception to the rule, things generally go quite well and we generally get the job done and we generally fix it and we generally make something out of nothing. And yeah, so as all the praising comments from this chat tonight can contest. But unfortunately, Mr. LDI can't be with us because he's on a contest, so he can't defend himself. So you're going to have to take my word over his.
Well, I'm sure he'll enjoy watching this back tomorrow, and we'll encourage him to write in with his version of events. But thank you, because I've always wondered as well, Sonny, why it was called Demolition Crew. I just thought maybe it was a friendly nickname, but there was a reason. But for most people, of course, you putting things up and helping them.
Yeah, like I say, it was just a series of unfortunate events, but yeah, it's a term of endearment more than a slate. And anyone that's had any work done with us by us will totally appreciate that it's a good thing rather than a bad thing.
Lovely. All right, Sonny, thank you for that short story.
Sorry.
No, but it's lovely to know why you're called that and why you got that nickname. Thank you. And thank you, Jim, as well, very much for explaining about your all your antenna systems and things. And I'm sure that tonight we're gradually inspiring people. We've seen from the smallest station with that lovely little FT818 of Victor's right to the big stuff with a massive mast. So there's something for everybody here. Let's now go over to Malcolm G3PDH, because again, Malcolm's written up quite a lot of stuff for me, but he's there on the Zoom call. So it'd be lovely to hear from you in person, Malcolm, as we show your pictures, if that's all right.
Yes, okay, fine. Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you fine, thank you. And we're going to show your pictures so you can talk us through them.
Right, okay. Well, maybe best to start with the antenna rather than the controller, maybe. Okay, so this strange looking antenna is actually a step IR urban beam. And one of my granddaughters calls it my dog bone antenna, or aerial, because of the shape of a dog bone. What it is a 2-element, a variation really on all of the step IR beams we've seen earlier on. The same principle with the motors on the boom, driving out spooled metal tapes, as it were, around out to the elements, which are put out to the various lengths according to the controller. The antenna on the top is a V2000 VHF antenna, and the tower is an Ultron tower. It's about 45 feet, and the wire antenna is an 80-meter dipole. So the reason really for putting this one up was I had like Paul, I had an A3S Cushcraft and a high gain 3-element before that. And they only, of course, cover the normal bands, 20, 15, and 10. So in order to rationalize the number of antennas, I decided to go for the step IR urban beam, which covers from 40 meters up to 6 meters, all of the bands in between. And all I need then is a wire dipole for 80 meters. As far as top band is concerned, I do have a top band dipole, but I only put that up as and when required for particular contests or events. So the principle on this antenna is very much the same as the step IRs that we've been looking at. But the point about this one, as you can see, is you've got looped ends to the antenna. So that makes the construction a little bit more tricky, in particular to make sure that the spooled out aerial elements will go right round the bend when necessary and round the loop and back down the other side, because on 40 meters and 30 meters, it is a rotary dipole, and on 20 meters upwards, of course, it's a close space two-element beam. So on 40 meters, the elements go right round the loop and almost back to the down the other element again. So it's kind of a bit like a folded dipole, not exactly a folded, but a bent round dipole. On 30 meters, they go out to the loop and round to just one end of the loop. So it's more of a conventional dipole on 30 meters. But strangely enough, comparing performance with the original 3-element antenna, I find with stations that I kind of regularly work in the States, I get very similar signal reports. And on 40 meters, I'm finding that it works very well on 40 meters. Certainly seems to work very well on the Koblenz SCED. I get very good reports from Germany on it, on the Koblenz SCED. And of course, CW-wise or DX-wise, working DX into Australia or wherever on 40 meters. It works very well indeed. I think maybe it's because my wire antennas for 40 meters were inverted V dipoles, and this antenna is kind of more horizontal, and the antenna is effectively higher than it would be with just an inverted V type of antenna. The other advantage on the step IRs, which applies to all of them in particular, is once you set the beam into, say, a westerly direction, you've got 3 positions on the controller whereby you can have forward gain. So in other words, you're transmitting maximum signal and receiving in the main direction that you're beaming in. And then you can quickly press a button on the controller and put it into a reverse direction. So if somebody calls you on the back of the beam, say from Europe, if you're beaming at America, rather than having to turn the beam right round, you can probably see on the controller, you've got normal showing with the green light on the left, 180 below it, and then there's bidirectional. So if you want to reverse the beam the other way to quickly work a station off the back of the beam, you just press the button by the red light on 180, and within about 3 seconds it's tuned, reversed its direction, and you're working the station. The signal comes up from the station behind you. And then you can go to bidirectional, where it will kind of transmit the signal in both directions, which can be useful if you're just looking for a general QSO. The controller, this one is the Sda2000 controller, so it gives you quite a lot of information on the controller. You can, of course, tweak the frequency, so the antenna is always resonant on the frequency that you want to transmit on. And that may be why, in a way, the performance seems fairly similar to the 3-element trapped tri-bander type of beam, which is a bit of a compromise, having the traps. These antennas, the step IRs, are all resonant antennas with resonant length elements. So it may be that the resonance is improved over the compromise of the 3-element tri-band trapped antenna. Also, with this controller, and I think you can with the ordinary controller, but they've made it more simple to use on this one. You can tweak the element lengths by a percentage, or you can change the element lengths to get a better match. Of course, the point with these, once you set them up correctly, you've always got basically a one-to-one SWR, so there really is no need for an antenna tuner. So it's always fully resonant. The only slight drawback on them, and the same with all of the step IRs, is it does take a little bit of time to change band, particularly going from 40 meters to 20 or 10 meters, where there's a lot of elements to be wound in and then wound out. But generally between the HF bands, it only takes a few seconds to change bands, so not too bad. So that's basically the story on this one.
You're quite a fan then, Malcolm. Sorry,
you've got a retract button, so you can bring the elements right in, and then where the frequency is shown, it will show elements home. So if there's going to be really strong winds or thunderstorm, and you don't want any elements kind of spooled out, you just press the retract button and bring them right in. So there's no metal within the fiberglass elements showing.
It does sound, I mean, to me, Malcolm, and I'm not anywhere near as experienced, of course, with antennas and things as you are, but it does sound almost like almost a perfect antenna in what it can do, and the fact that it can make itself smaller in the event of a storm or winds and things. So how do you rate it? I mean, of all the antennas you've had, is this one of the best you've had?
Well, yeah, it works very well. As I said, the reports I'm getting from it are very good. I would say the only issue probably with some of the step IR antennas now is the fact there is not a UK agent now, and so you are dealing with the States if you want support. So one hopes that they will keep going okay, and I think generally seem to be quite reliable. Roger had his for many years, 14, 15 years, before any problems.
Yeah, I was surprised that he'd said in his notes earlier that he'd sold it now.
Yes, he has sold it now, and he's going to change to a different antenna, I think. But it did give him good performance and good reliability, I think, in the time that he'd had it. So it was same with any of these more complex type of antennas. But yeah, it does everything that I want to do, and it reduces the number of antennas, because what I had to do before, if I wanted to work 30 meters or 24 megs, all the other bands, walk bands in between, I had separate wire antennas, and it gets a bit messy with too many wire antennas in the garden. So yes, this brings them all really into one antenna, apart from an 80-meter wire dipole, which I have. So from that point of view, yes, it's all very neat. It's 30 and a half feet across the antenna from end to end.
That's big, isn't it?
It weighs 20 kilos.
If we just have another look at the antenna to appreciate that. You said it was 30 meters.
30 feet.
30 feet, sorry.
Across from tip to tip. And it weighs 20 kilos. That's mainly due to the motors really on the boom. And the rating for it, the power rating, is 3 kilowatts. So it's a high power rating antenna. So I'm not likely to put too much power into it with 400 watts. So yes, it does everything that really I want to do. It's a strange looking antenna. And putting it together needed quite a bit of care in terms of, there are a lot of parts with these step IRs, but in particular I had to pay careful attention to the loops to make sure that passage of the elements around the loops was smooth.
Absolutely, I can see exactly why your granddaughters call it the dog loop, a dog bone antenna.
Yes, that's right.
Well, it's wonderful. Thank you for sharing it with us, because I know lots of us have heard of step IRs and steppers, but we haven't, we haven't really seen it in as much detail as this before. So, it's an interesting antenna, and if you've got the space, I guess, and it's a reasonably expensive antenna, I'm guessing, but it could be quite effective for you.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, Malcolm, thank you very much indeed for sharing that with us.
Okay.
So we're nearly approaching the end. It's 9:20, so it's fantastic that everybody has taken part like this and contributed, and lovely to see people live as well. The next person, in fact, we're just on one more really there, and we'll go back to our friends at home on Zoom. So if you have, or two, is it?
Two.
If you have got any questions, oh yes, you're right, sorry. If you have got any questions at home, this is a good time to sort of get them in there on Facebook or on BATC, and we'll try and share those with those people who we've got watching on Zoom. So the next picture's from Phil, G4LPP, and again we know that the demolition crew was something to do with this a few weeks ago. This is a tower with the Cushcraft A3S, and Phil says the base of the tree is holding a 160 metre dipole, an 80 metre dipole, a G5RV and a Marconi antenna. I don't know what a Marconi antenna is, maybe we'll ask Steve in a minute. And there's a 4-way switch box and a Meritron RCX4 with various choke balance as well. But we did see that tower, didn't we, going up a few weeks ago. So Phil, thank you very much for sharing that picture. Let's have a closer look at that thing on the right, that combination of antenna and the balun there, you see. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Phil. And finally, from Pete, G4RAV, he has sent us this. I'd always like to join in the NARC Monday CWNet whenever possible. And don't worry, we haven't got the wrong picture up there. All practical for me. However, my antennas are always a problem, mainly because I have to erect them on communal ground. Followed up by setting up my station out in the car or van or wherever I am at the time. So this is the point of the coffee cup really, while we tell you about this. My choice of antenna has always been a horizontal wire device of some kind. One time I did have an 80 metre half-wave wire which I tuned with my DLP 300. The end result worked even though it was strung up at various heights and angles through a bunch of trees. Only on one occasion did I manage to string one free from obstructions from my bedroom window to a tree down the road. Anyway, my results, to which other NARC net members could possibly testify, are variable and never very good. With the last net, I spent the previous weekend setting up an end-fed half-wave wire, a length of 22 metres, which in turn was fed from my transceiver via coax RG58U and a 243 toroid, as per the design published by Steve G0KYA, and thus producing a 49:1 transformer. I cut the aerial wire long on purpose so that I could trim it later. However, I was really pleased when I got it all up in the air, ready for the net, because the length still needs to be trimmed perhaps, but although I do not know the exact figure, the SWR measured by my FT857 transceiver was well within the pass band, and this was on 3543 kHz. The net for me was one of the best so far, signal-wise, and I really enjoyed joining in. The aerial worked well further up the band, 7 megs and 14 megs without any additional bits and pieces, although sadly it's all in the car boot at the moment. Anyway, I'd like to say thank you to you and Tammy and to Steve and all those others who share these snippets of information, and to say it's so inspirational and educational. Now, he'd also just like to share this picture, not of a coffee cup, but this is a toroid. He says that he also thinks we might like this picture of a 49:1 transformer that he made and used on his 22 metre end-fed wire antenna for 80 metres, etc. And the toroid, as he mentioned earlier, is the 243 as recommended by Steve G0KYA. There you go. It shows you, it's just in a tin, look, a regular tin of sweets or something like that, which is a good excuse to eat the sweets.
Yep, definitely.
But there we are. And well, I'm going to go back to Steve now, because you've heard so many times, Steve, us mention these. What are your thoughts about what you've heard? I mean, so many people using these end-fed antennas. It must be one of the cheapest and easiest antennas to make.
Yeah, I mean, I can't take any credit for it because it's been developed by a number of amateurs, around the world. I mean,
Well, I think you can take a little bit of credit though, because you're one of those, though, Steve, who's contributed to the designs over the years, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of came up with the initial idea of using a capacitor or coax as a capacitor for the single band end fed, but I was always worried about how on earth we going to make this thing a multi-band, and it wasn't until people started playing with 49 to 1 uns or 41 transformers that problem was sorted. So I mean, the guy in America, Steve, can't remember his surname now. He did lots and lots of videos saying, well, what if we try this? What if we try that? And how does it compare with a center-fed half-wave dipole? Is it the same? And so that kind of sorted out a lot of the problems. So yeah, I think it's the great thing about radio hams is they're prepared to actually play with things and try things, and by sharing information, I think it works really well. So I'm quite pleased with what I've heard tonight. That's really, really interesting. I love the last picture you had of the transform or the toroid in the box. It looks like you've had a cobweb in there.
Yeah, like I must admit. Well, I also thought it might be glue. Do you want it? Can we put it back to that?
It's a hot melt glue gun, I think, and that's the effect you get. And it looks like spiders made a nest there. But yeah, well, great stuff. Yeah, I might have used slightly thicker coax, but not coax, wire. But no, if it works, it works.
That's for him, didn't it? And he looks like he's insulated the ferrite first with some of that sort of fabric type tape, isn't it? Yeah, or plastic tape maybe.
Yeah. Well, again, that was something that was a lot of the early books. Oh yeah, you must wrap it in PTFE tape. But then somebody said, well, hang on, why? Because it's not actually a good conductor. So in fact, if you check it with a multimedia, you'll find that there's very, very high resistance. So in fact, you don't need the PTFE tape on it at all, unless you're running mega amounts of power. But up to 100, 200 watts, it doesn't really need anything around it. So there we go. Very good. Well done.
Brilliant. Well done, and thank you again to you, Steve, for your inspiring people. I'm sure your talk with us a few weeks ago helped a lot of people. If you missed that, you can certainly find it either on our YouTube, the Norfolk Amateur Radio Club YouTube channel. You'll find that talk, or you'll also find it on Facebook from a few weeks ago. So finally, I'd just like to go round to the only person we haven't spoken to on the Zoom call tonight so far, which is Paul, M1AFQ. Paul, we'll need to unmute, I'm afraid, Paul. Then we can have a chat with you. There we go. Oh, we still can't hear you.
We still can't hear you.
He messaged me earlier he was having issues, so I'm assuming they've carried on.
We needed another idiot board, Paul. For me, not for you, for me. I had a message about the idiot board a minute ago on my phone. So I told people about that. It was a piece of board that they used to put under the cameras before auto cues, really, and things like that. Or if they wanted an impromptu way of telling a presenter something. That's why they're called idiot boards, I think. Anyway. All right, well, Paul, I'm sorry we can't join you to talk to you tonight, but I'm sure you'll approve of what Sonny and Paul have been doing with your station in the last few days. Yeah, thumbs up from Paul. Let's see the thumbs up again. Right. Okay. And once again, thank you ever so much to all of you at home for joining us.
Does anybody else want to say anything?
Oh, yeah, if any of you would like to come back on anything. I've got a message for you, Tony, from John G0JDL, who's the only one who guessed it correctly about your Clico pliers, and he said he might have known it was you because you helped him with his aeroplane a few years ago. So, and that's about it, I think. And we haven't had any questions or anything about antennas. Hopefully we've shared what lots of people have got. It's amazing how 2 hours can just go like that with just sharing people's antennas and things. And next time when we do it in the shack, it will be about something else. Well, if you've got an idea of something that you think that we should do to share another aspect of antennas, it might be, another aspect of amateur radio in people's shacks. It might be the VHF and the UHF antennas. It might be even higher frequency than that. Or it might be the actual rigs, or maybe a mode or something like that. So if there's something you want to learn about that you know other people have got, then let me know. And then next month in November, we'll come back to it and we'll do another in the shack and featuring something else. So thank you once again to everybody who sent in their pictures and all the words. And again, thanks very much to everybody who joined us live on Zoom tonight. I think it's been a very full night looking at all aspects of HF antenna. But that's almost it for NARC Live now. Just to tell you that, remind you really what's happening. I mentioned that Saturday the BATC, the British Amateur Television Club Convention, is Saturday. I've also been sent a message earlier by Paul and Bob to say that Jamboree on the Air is this weekend. So I guess that might be happening in some places. Not quite sure what the at some scout activities. If you are interested in taking part in those, though, I would contact the scout groups first, because I'm not sure what they whether they'll be allowing other people to come in with COVID and everything else. But thanks for letting us know that anyway, Bob and Paul. So on Sunday we've got the GB2RS news at 7 o'clock on the repeater GB3MB. Monday night we've got the 18th, on the 18th of October, we've got the Monday Night Net with Michael, 2E0 SZP, the 80 metre CW net at 8:30 on 3.543 megahertz. And next Wednesday here on NARC Live in 1 week's time, we've got Alan Walkie, W2AEW, going to take you all around the sort of test equipment that could be useful to you in your shack. And please don't forget to send us your pictures and your stories and everything else to us, because it's what makes the programme. You can send them to this address at the moment. Maybe I shouldn't be saying that, Tammy.
Yep.
Sorry, you have to go back. Here we go, radio@dcpmicro.com. Thank you very much indeed, so once again, for everybody for joining. It's been a good night on antennas.
It has.
And we'll hope to see you again next week on NARC Live. So from Tammy, M0TC.
Goodbye.
And from me, David G7URP. Thanks for joining us, and see you next week. Quick look to everybody at home, waving goodbye as well. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.